to touch on that part here.
Awesome, awesome. Well, guys, today we're not going to beat any new topics really to death. We told you coming out of conference that we were going to focus on simplicity moving forward. That's the message coming from Symmetry Corporate. That's the message we want to continue to repeat. Let's make this business as simple as we possibly can. And we talked a few weeks ago about what we're calling the Great Eight, right? The 4 keys to a successful week that Paige mentioned, and the 4 cornerstones. And really, anytime you're having a bad week here, if you look at those 8 factors, chances are you've allowed yourself to slip in one of those 8. So we've talked a lot about massive action. We've talked a lot about scheduling. We've talked a lot about resources. But there's one area that we haven't really hit on, and that's what I want to focus on today. And before we get to what that pillar is, I want to talk a little bit about a concept that we heard from Miss Sarah Pappas at in a breakout at the national conference. And I was trying to find the dungeon scene from The Princess Bride to introduce this, but we want to talk about the pit of despair. Now, the pit of despair is something that any agent who's been here for a while has encountered. Maybe you've even encountered it when you were going through pre-licensing, right? Raise your hand if you've been there. See a show of hands. So everybody whose name you saw on that leaderboard has been through the pit of despair. What we want to talk about today is what that descent looks like and how this system can help you recover. So we're going to run through a little hypothetical here. And as I'm going through this, do me a favor, if you're brand new or if you've been here for a while, if this sounds like a familiar scenario to you as we're going through it, go ahead and just throw a 1 in the chat for me. I want you guys to see that this is not isolated to just you. So I'm going to check names here because I don't want to pick on anybody. It looks like, okay, I don't see a Dave on this call. So we're just going to go ahead and pick on our hypothetical agent named Dave. Now, Dave's brand new. He came in all fired up. He cruised through his pre-licensing in about 5 weeks because he was taking his time. But eventually he got there. And Dave got his license and he got onboarded and he got contracted and he started getting his leads and he started dialing, right? And he was dialing through his leads and he booked some appointments and they didn't show up. So the next week he went back and he booked some more appointments and this time they showed up, but they didn't buy. Okay. Dave's still seeing hope, but he's starting to get a little bit cynical about things. He's starting to wonder, does this really work? And in week 3, he gets somebody to buy, but they cancel 2 days later. And all of a sudden, Dave's hit with a chargeback. Dave is starting to spiral a little bit. Dave's going closer and closer and closer to that pit of despair that happens early on. So Dave has his natural knee-jerk reaction to when things start getting tough. He's going to buckle down, right? He is going to stop spending time on calls because that takes away from his productivity. He needs more appointments, right? So he's going to turn the team calls into dialing time, and that's where he's going to focus his energy. And, Dave's got a couple of kids and a wife at home, and, they're just a big distraction. And so Dave's going to go buy a new lock for his office door, and he's going to lock that door so the kids can't come in while he's working on his risk assessments. He's going to isolate a little bit because Dave knows, damn it. Dave knows that if he just puts some more time into this, if he dedicates himself to this, to the exclusion of all else, things are going to start turning around. Only they don't. A week later, Dave's still locked in his office. He's not going on any team calls. He's barely talking to his family. His kid lost a tooth the other day and he forgot to put $1 underneath the pillow because he was so focused on work. And he's still not making any sales. Dave's in the pit of despair. Dave's in the pit of despair because that knee-jerk reaction that we have when things start going poorly is to withdraw. It's to divest ourselves from the one thing that has the power to pull us out of that pit. The one thing that has the power to raise our mood, no matter the situation, no matter the challenge, no matter the fear. Dave's withdrawing from everybody in his life. He's withdrawing from his family. He's withdrawing from his friends. He's withdrawing from his social and work network that is there to support him. We often think that when we focus solely on one aspect of our life, that aspect is going to improve, right? We hear that all the time. What you focus on grows. What we don't hear is that when you focus on one thing to the exclusion of all else, you put your life out of balance. Now, we talked about the octagon a couple of weeks ago, right? And how growth has to happen in balance. Otherwise, those walls start to fall down. When you focus all your energy on one goal, you start to push that goal further and further away. And that despair continues to deepen. So what could Dave have done instead? You guys heard of the Harvard Man study? It was started back in the 1930s. Anybody ever read anything about that? They tracked 250 Harvard freshmen starting in the 1930s. They tracked them all the way through their college. The study has had multiple directors over the years. It's a study of psychology and of happiness. They've tracked their lives all the way through. Now, not all of these gentlemen are still alive anymore. Those who are quite up into their elderly years. But one of the things that the Harvard study focused on was the relative success of all of the men, all of the 250, I believe, gentlemen that they were focusing on. Now, this study has been cited in numerous journals and numerous books to prove a lot of different points. In fact, one of the biggest ones that it showed us is that it's not success that breeds happiness, but rather happiness that breeds success, right? We've talked about this quite a bit over the course of the last couple of months. But what this also showed us, the most recent director actually wrote a very interesting paper on it, was that the largest factor in determining the happiness of the men in this study was the strength and pervasiveness of their social relationships. You see, when we withdraw, when we, out of fear or embarrassment or frustration, start to shut ourselves off from the networks that are there to support us, we remove a biological imperative that our success is predicated on. It's not just mood that we're talking about here. It's not just emotions. This is actual neurochemistry, right? This is biology. We know that positive social connections release a chemical in our brain called oxytocin. Oxytocin makes you feel good. I always think back to that scene in Legally Blonde, right? Exercise releases endorphins, and endorphins make you happy, and happy people just don't go and shoot their husband. Same way here. Connected people have higher levels of oxytocin, and people with higher levels of oxytocin have water wings that keep them floating above the pit of despair. So if we take everything that we just talked about in kind of one all-encompassing factor, what are we here talking about today? We're talking about the power of association. We're talking about one of those four pillars, right? Because we've talked about massive action, constant correction. We've talked about belief. We've talked about dedication to personal growth and self-improvement. We haven't focused enough on the importance of association. And it's one of the things that I think often gets dismissed as we look at this business because we are all over the place, right? We have agents ranging from New York to Hawaii, from Alaska to Florida, and covering every state in between. The only time most of us see each other is on these Zoom calls and in the Teams chat. But what we learn as we look at the biological side of emotional connection is that high quality connections don't need to be deep, don't need to be face-to-face, don't need to be, a years long friendship in order to produce those positive chemical results in our brains. See, a lack of those connections can have effects such as increasing your blood pressure, increasing cortisol levels that are precursors to high stress moments. Moments of connection, feeling like you're seen, seeing other people, understanding that you're facing the same struggle, lead to reduced levels of cortisol, which allows you to bounce back faster. High quality connections can happen in an email. They can happen in a Zoom chat. They can happen on the Teams chat. They can happen in a virtual office. The importance is knowing that when you find yourself standing over the edge of that pit, when you find yourself looking at a void, a place you don't want to go, that you reach out, that you connect, that you hold on to those social interactions that continue to fill your cup so you have something to pour from. Because if you isolate, stop showing up on team calls, stop reaching out to your upline because maybe you're embarrassed, stop talking to your family because you're embarrassed, it's just going to get worse. See, what Dave did by locking himself away was try to focus his willpower in order to achieve success. But what do we know about willpower? Number one is that it's the least effective means of changing our habits and changing our results. Why? Because you got to think of your willpower as a reservoir. And if you're using willpower to deny yourself something or force yourself something throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, it's going to become less and less effective over time. But if you focus on connections, if you focus on those things that we are biologically predetermined to need for our success and our survival, you raise your spirit, you raise your mood, you raise your efficiency and your effectiveness simply by putting yourself out there and letting yourself be a part of the team that wants to see you succeed. Association can be uncomfortable, especially when you're new. That's one of the reasons I wanted to start introducing our new agents at the beginning of these calls. We all see you. We've all been there. Not a single person here hasn't wanted to throw their computer out the window during a frustrating chapter in pre-licensing, or bury their phone in a block of concrete after doing 300 dials in a single sitting. We've all been there. We all know the feeling. We're here to help. You have peer support. There are other people going through this journey at the same time as you. Identify them, reach out, use that Teams chat, hop in the office, make a connection that you can rely on in those times of high stress so that you don't go into that pit of despair. That's all I've got for today. Paige, anything to wrap it up?
Nope. I think to add would be to take away. I think big thing about pit of despair is recognizing where you are, knowing that you're there, and realizing that you will not be there forever. Just keep plugging along. Keep that vision inside as far as what you're doing this for and why. You're going to get through it. Reach out to us too. But have a great Monday, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, y'all.